if you're watching this recording at a later date, welcome to Angel Aid. Today is Thursday, August 26th, about 10 a.m. Pacific, and we are hosting Rare Mothers Roundtable. And today we are going to highlight Kathryn, and she's just going to share a little bit about her story and how she practices self-care, or maybe how she wishes she practices it a little more, and what it's like to be a rare mother. And we also have a few other rare mothers joining us this morning, so we will make sure that we open it up for discussion and just, you know, chat with each other, connect. The point of Rare Mothers Roundtable is just to hear your story reflected in other people's, so that when you're feeling really alone, you can hop on YouTube, hop on Angel Aid's website, Mighty Networks, and just hear from other people that you're not alone, and that the things you're feeling you're not isolated. There's other mothers that are experiencing really similar things, and they're always there for you to reach out to. So that's the idea behind this Rare Mothers Roundtable, is just, we're hoping we have like a library of videos that mothers can watch whenever they have time. And 10 a.m. on a Thursday can be difficult, as we just talked about. So these are always going to be available on YouTube, Facebook, wherever we have videos available. You can watch them at any time. So
that's awesome.
Yes. So Kathryn, do you want to just start by introducing yourself a little bit, just a little bit about yourself, about your family, how you got here?
Sure. Thanks for having me. And I'm so glad to be here and that I found you guys. So my name is Kathryn Alexander. I have 3 children. My oldest, Jack, is almost 4. And then I have twins, a boy and a girl. They were born in March of 2020 at the beginning of the lockdown. And one of my twins, actually through newborn screening, he was diagnosed as a newborn with spinal muscular atrophy type 1, which is the most serious type of SMA. It's basically like ALS for babies. It's awful. It almost sounds like something that's made up because it's so awful. The babies are born normal, and then as they grow and get older, they begin to lose muscle function. And when you have type 1, that's the most serious type. And those babies in the past did not live past the age of 2 unless they were permanently on ventilation. And so it's actually caused by a gene called the Smn1 gene. SMN is a protein that is made by our cells that is required for muscles to function. And actually, there are other systems now that they're realizing need SMN protein as well. So you do have a backup gene called SMN2, but SMN2 doesn't really work as well. And so depending on how many copies of this backup gene you have, that equals the type of SMA that you have. And Connor only has 2 copies. So he has the most serious type. In 2019, they approved gene therapy it's gene transfer therapy, essentially to replace the missing gene. So to replace the SMN1 gene. We were so blessed because we had all this stuff happen that we just happened to be in the Boston area. Mass General Hospital is like one of the top hospitals in the world, and it happens to have the world the foremost expert in SMA around, basically. I mean, one of the top doctors. Her name is Kathy Swoboda. She's unbelievable. And so the woman has 3 cell phones. I mean, she's been doing this for 30 years. She's so passionate. And so we also happen to have, Connor and Tierney happened to be born at a hospital where they were a couple weeks early. So that was good for Connor because nothing had started yet. He was pre-symptomatic. Even his biomarkers were normal. I happened to opt into newborn screening. I mean, I don't even remember doing it. And that's how they found this. And his twin sister, Tierney, does not have the condition. Jack does not have SMA. I had never heard of it, but my husband and I are obviously carriers of the mutation. And it's like 1 in 50 people in the US is a carrier of this mutation. And so if you happen to marry someone who's a carrier, you have a 25% chance each time you have a child of having a kid with SMA. And so we had no idea. No one in my family has it. No one in his family has it. So it was the beginning of the lockdown. I found out, I was in the hospital with high blood pressure after the twins were born. I found out they diagnosed him. He was 3 days old. He was in the special care nursery with his sister. And I was by myself. My husband wasn't allowed to be in the hospital. It was really brutal. And then they took him immediately to Mass General. So he was at another hospital. He was at Mass General. I was at a hospital called Newton-Wellesley Hospital, and my daughter, his twin sister, was at Newton-Wellesley, and my husband was at home. So like, I was by myself. I couldn't see my child. And the doctors kept saying to me, don't Google this, don't Google this, because in the past, these children died. And so Connor is a really unique case, which is amazing and awful at the same time, because basically Connor is pre-symptomatic and he received 2 different types of disease modifying therapies, which were just approved in the last couple of years. And so he is still pre-symptomatic. He's totally, like, if you saw him, you'd be like, there's nothing wrong with him. But he has this, he will always have it. And we don't know any long-term data on this stuff. We don't know what is going to happen. We don't know how long it will last. We don't know what other systems could be affected, because these children haven't lived very long. And so I have no one to relate to. And people are like, well, he's fine. You should be happy. He's like, and I am, but like, he's not fine. This didn't permanently replace, it's not gene editing. It's not a permanent fix. And so people don't understand that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I understand a little bit more about medicine just because I covered pharmaceutical stocks at an investment bank for like over 10 years. So it's great and it's awful, because I know I always read medical publications and his doctor is always like, ugh, but it's brutal. I've actually asked her point blank, please, like, can you give me an idea of how long, or whatever, what's your estimate? And they just won't, they have no data. So she won't say, she'll just say, my goal is to eradicate this in Connor, and that's it. But she's not going to give me an estimate, because gene transfer therapy, you'll see estimates like, oh, it lasts 5 to 10 years, but it's not permanent. And it's a one-shot deal. You can't get it again because it's delivered in a virus and your body develops antibodies. So what else are we going to give him if he starts to deteriorate? And like, every day I'm just a wreck about this. It's always in the back of my mind, and I'm a type A planner. And so for me to live every day with this unknown is like torturous. And self-care, I have like forgotten what that is. And I used to go to the hair salon weekly to get blow dries and like get my nails done and all this stuff. And the pandemic really screwed everybody up, because I was super isolated because of Connor's condition as well. And so we were like doubly isolated. And so that did not help my situation. It made my anxiety so much worse. And my husband one of the reasons that I fell in love with him is because he's very different from me. He's very, very positive and upbeat, which is great for me, except in this situation, it's been very difficult because he is just like, it's almost like denial to me. I'm like, you're not facing reality. Like Connor, this is who Connor is. You have to acknowledge it. It's there. He's going to get more tired than the typical kid. Like he does. I mean, as he's getting older, we're beginning to see a little bit of a difference. He can't run as fast as his sister. He like he's basically running, he goes upstairs. I mean, if you saw him, you would be like, he's normal, but he gets tired more easily. I actually think he's in some level, he has like a little bit of pain all the time. I can tell he's in some pain some days. He just wants me. He's very clingy sometimes. And I think it's just because it's like fibromyalgia, like, but they don't know that. I just sense it. There's just not a lot. And this is rare. So, and not only is this rare, but like there's no one in our position. I mean, Connor is like a groundbreaking case. His doctor's obsessed with him because of that. But on the other hand, there's no one that has been in the position that we are in. And so I literally have like no one to relate to or who's been through this with receiving gene therapy and also receiving another therapy while pre-symptomatic and having the child be normal. There's no one. And so it's just brutal. We do have a night nurse. That's one thing I have to get sleep. I'm 3 days a week. I indulge in a night nurse so that I can actually, because another thing I worry about with Connor is just that he won't be strong enough to lift his head up in the crib and like he'll suffocate or something. And I'm just always worried about him. And so it's hard for me to sleep when I'm watching the video, like when I have the video monitor on. Whereas with my other children, like I would fall asleep. But with Connor, the minute he makes a noise or moves, I'm like, and so the night nurse has been with us ever since Connor was a newborn, and she knows him really well and she understands. She's professionally trained. And so that's 3 nights a week. But other than that, I try to practice mindfulness. I used to go to a therapist I did cognitive behavioral therapy for 10 years. And it's amazing and it's wonderful, but it takes practice. You have to actually like focus. And for me to focus right now, it's basically impossible. So I find it really hard. I've been listening to a podcast called 10% Happier, I think, with Dan Harris. And sometimes I'm just like, whatever, because it's about mindfulness. Sometimes it can get a little out there, but they had someone on there and I listened over and over to this. His name is George Mumford. And his story is amazing, but he's really an expert on resilience. And that's something that I'm really trying to, he's very, very into like staying in the present day and like looking at something objectively, because we put our spin on everything. So like, guess what? If your child has a rare condition, like he would look at it and say, yes, that's really difficult, but also, wow, like how lucky for you, because so he would see both sides, like, oh, your child is going to be more empathetic. Your child's going to be like a really special person. Maybe they'll invent something. Maybe they'll, or his siblings could, or, something positive. This could change your life in XYZ way. So he teaches you to practice looking at both sides, but it takes practice. And a lot of time I'm so exhausted emotionally and physically that I don't practice. I just want to blank stare into space and just like, I can't believe it's my life. It sounds like a movie, basically what we're going through. A lot of people just look at me like, what? They're like, okay, so your kid is the Bionic Kid. He received the most expensive drug in the world. I mean, it's a one-time infusion and it costs $2.1 million. Because guess what? It keeps your child alive. And if they receive it pre-symptomatically, your child could be normal, quote unquote, normal, like developing in line with children who don't have the condition. It's miraculous. His doctor has used that word. And for a specialist to use that word is like, they don't use it. So it scared me when she used that word. I was like, what do you mean? just because of the job I used to do. I was like, please define that. Because, specialists are a unique breed. She's one of those key opinion leader doctors, and they're a unique breed. They're very passionate. She is unbelievably passionate, and she's seen a lot of tough stuff. A lot of children have passed away that she's taken care of, obviously, but so she's so passionate about Connor, and I'm so thankful. But on the other hand, when I first met her, I really didn't like her. I wanted to like strangle her, to be honest. I was like, shut up, because she just talked and talked and talked and talked about this. And she was like excited. So she was smiling. And I'm looking at her like, you're giving me, like, you're telling me all this stuff about my child, who you're telling me my child is very ill, and you're smiling. Like, what's wrong with you? But I realize it's just because she's so passionate. And so again, like, I could talk to her about things. She actually, to be honest with you, I did go to her because I was so desperate for help. I went to her and said, I don't know what to do. I'm struggling to cope. I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. I've tried everything, because in my early 20s, I unfortunately had gone through losing someone very close to me very suddenly, a young person. So at age 21, at the time, it was my boyfriend at the time, he passed away very suddenly. And so I'd been through, I felt that I had the tools, but as a mother, it's different. And so I was trying to use these tools, and it just wasn't enough. And I have 2 other children who need me, and I have to be present for them. And I'm like, how? Like, because my oldest son, Jack, is starting to ask questions about, why are we going to the doctor with Connor so much? Is Connor okay? And also, I'm hyper vigilant about Connor. I don't mean to be, but I just like naturally, I get more nervous about Connor, and Connor's more connected with me because I've been with him at the hospital so much. And the physical therapist actually said, I think Connor and kids who have these issues, like, they see their parents as kind of like extensions of their own body, because you naturally know what they need without them having to even say anything. And so they feel a connection to you that's stronger than your normal, typical child that doesn't have anything, which is actually really, George Mumford would say, that's amazing. Like, what a special thing to have that connection with your child. And I agree. I mean, but on the other hand, it's such a double-edged sword. And so I went to his doctor and said, I need help. I don't know what to do. And she introduced me to the head of pediatric palliative care at Mass General Hospital, who is unbelievable. And palliative care really is a very awesome resource for helping navigate through life with rare conditions with children. It's not just for people who are dying. It's to help you live, really, like, and be present in the days that you have. And so it's a little bit of a misnomer sometimes, palliative care, especially with children. So she's been great. But again, the pandemic, you can't go to anyone. You can't go to a therapist's office. You can't go to groups. You can't hug people. You can't be with people. So it's just been a struggle. It's just, you take it day by day. And I think I was trying to remember how I found the Angel Aid site. I think it must have come up in an article I read. It must have been something I read maybe on LinkedIn or just generally about Rare, that had a link. And I clicked on it and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I was so thankful because it's just been very, very hard. And I do need to figure out time to practice more self-care, because it does negatively affect me and how I am with my kids. I need to take time for myself in order to be there for them and be happier and have more energy. So I think it's just nice to talk to other people about it. You know, my husband also, again, like, he compartmentalizes it and he really doesn't like to talk about it. And he gets very angry about the whole situation. If we do talk about it, he just doesn't, he's not where I am with it at all. And that's another thing that's a struggle. We're just on two different levels. And so I felt very alone with kind of my pain. I feel like I'm grieving, but my child is here, which is, I guess they call it complicated grief or something like that, because you're a mother and you inherently know that your child could pass away early, but the child is still here. So how do you function through that? It's a lot. So anyway,
We are here for you. We will give you a virtual hug.
Thank you.
Yes.
And
So glad you found us.
Me too. I really, you know, I think, I hate the saying everything happens for a reason, but things happen, and it's nice to have these little kind of serendipitous things happen. But you do, one thing I did learn from past hardships and tough things I've been through, you got to move forward in some way. And that does not mean doing a lot. It can mean getting out of bed. Just get out of bed, you know, like, you don't have to take a shower. Who cares? Get out of bed and hug your kid and get them breakfast. And then if you do that, you'll feel a little better. And then you do the next thing, and then you do the next thing. So that's kind of how I cope. But I don't just want to be living. I want to, like, you know, I want to improve myself a little bit.
Well, I think, you know, I'm always honored when I get to sit in these conversations, and sometimes I'm so young and I feel like I have so much to learn, and I love sitting in and listening to your lives, and how you share is really inspiring. And
Thank you.
I think you are doing things for self-care. I think, you know, maybe you're cutting yourself a little short there. I do. You know,
I forgot to mention one thing that has been awesome for me, and I don't know if other moms, everyone's different with what helps them, but one thing that's really helped me through this has been, I work a lot with the people at Novartis Gene Therapies. They are the inventors of Zolgensma. They used to be called Avexis. I had actually reached out to them. I sent an email to the president of the company on LinkedIn, and I told him Connor's story. And basically I said, I wanted to tell you my son's story because there are so many, I think, very important lessons. Number one, newborn screening. I can't believe it's not in every state. Now that we have gene therapy for this condition, the earlier kids can get this therapy, the better they're going to do. So why wouldn't you screen in every state? Why doesn't the whole world screen for this? Every kid should be screened for this. I was shocked. And so I was like, I want to help get the word out about this. Look at my son. And then the other thing I said to him was, it's very important to tell Connor's story because it shows that in rare disease, how important collaborative, like, coordination and like quick movement. And, you know, we were lucky because the neonatologist contacted MGH immediately when she saw the results and immediately got a specialist. And that specialist immediately got him the treatment to keep him pre-symptomatic. You're moving so fast because any minute he could start to deteriorate. And that's what it's like with these conditions. You don't know how much time you have before the body and you can't get that back. You can't get that back. And so you got to go as quickly as possible. And luckily we were in Boston and we just happened to be in the right place. But there are people in the middle of nowhere, you know, if you're in the Midwest, you know, in Kansas, in Arkansas. I used to live in Texas. I mean, even, you know, not Dallas or Houston, but say West Texas. I've driven through there many times. You know, it could take you all day just to get to your doctor. So how, you know, what happens? People need access to these treatments and they need to get them ASAP, and let's figure out the payment stuff later. Let's figure out all that stuff later, you know, but look at Connor. We need to use him as a positive example of what can happen. And people need to know his story. And so the president of the company immediately emailed me back and was like, thank you. This is amazing. You know, is it okay if I tell people at the company your story? This is why we do what we do. If you want to help us out with media opportunities, you know, we'd love that. If not, we understand. And so I do actually work with them to get the word out on Connor and newborn screening, especially, but also the whole thing, and rare disease. And that's helped me to cope as well, because I feel like I'm creating a positive legacy for my son. And it motivates me because I feel as though I'm helping other kids and other families. And that makes me feel better.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're the female twin.
Yes.
She's not a carrier.
She doesn't have the condition. She might most likely is a carrier. Probably my kids are carriers. So they have to just make sure they're not marrying someone, having kids with another person that's a carrier. And that's why it's important to get tested, to get genetic testing before you have kids. I mean, I'm older, so I had what I thought was all the tests you could do, you know, and I was monitored with the twins. I was at the hospital every 2 weeks. And so it was really hard to get that news too, because I felt like, well, wait a second, I did everything right. Like, I did everything right. I mean, I went to every specialist. I ate healthy. You blame yourself too.
The rare diseases have specific tests that have to be done.
Yes. And you have to ask for that. And it's brutal because I didn't know what that was. I mean, you don't know. And so if no one in your family has had it, why would you know? So we had no idea. And Jack was fine. You know, we had a child. Jack is normal. So, you know, no one thought anything about it. And then this was like a huge slap in the face for me. And I think there also is a level of kind of embarrassment in a way, because you're like, oh, I'm screwed up genetically. That's honestly how I felt or feel. I'm like, oh, I gave this to my son, like it's my fault. Logically, I know that I shouldn't do that, but emotionally, I do that. I beat myself up because I'm like, I did this, you know, it's my fault. My oldest, it's the same feeling as my oldest son was born 6 weeks early for like no reason. You know, sometimes they don't really know why things happen in pregnancy. They just happen. That's the tough part about maternal fetal medicine. And Jack, again, I went to the doctor all the time. I ate super healthy. I rested, you know, I didn't have any other kids. This was my first child. That I did everything right. And he came 6 weeks early. My water broke one morning. I thought I had peed myself and went to the hospital, and they couldn't figure out why he was coming early. They did like every test in the book. And so he was in the NICU for a month, which was very difficult too, but in a different way. But, you know, I beat myself up for that still. I'm like, it's my fault. he came early. I was walking around too much. I was doing this, I was doing that. And the doctors were like, moms do this all the time. It's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. We don't know why this happens. Sometimes this happens and it's okay, but it's traumatic, and I think it's part of the trauma of this type of stuff. It is trauma.
Before COVID, we had a retreat here at the ranch.
Oh,
and I heard some of the things that you've said, I heard other mothers say.
did you?
And since, even regarding therapies and being carriers.
Yes.
So I really encourage you to keep coming to Angel Aid, because listening to other mothers and talking with them will support and give you more answers, because all of the organizations that we can get involved with that are genetically related, Angel Aid is the one that is the self-care for the mothers.
Yeah, it's like the only one.
Yeah. And so I want to see you some more. And thank you for sharing your story.
I will be here. I mean, I wish we could have multiple retreats in person every year. I don't know where you're located, Phyllis, but my brother is in the San Francisco area. And I know Crystal is she in the San Fran area or the Bay Area?
That's where her home is.
Okay.
She came down here this year for a year because my husband and I are getting old. and we kind of needed their support, so they came down for a year.
Oh, that's nice. You and your daughter are amazing. I am very inspired by your stories, and it's very motivational for me to see the two of you and how you're doing, because that helps give me energy, because I'm like, well, look at what these people have been through and look at how they're doing really well, and they're helping people, and you're going to get through it.
I'm glad that you are interested in helping to further things like getting the information out to people about testing. We made a trip to Washington, D.C. to advocate for Angel Aid. And Sarah's a new mother, to Angel Aid, I guess. And we haven't heard her story, but
sorry, Sarah.
Sarah Martin. But hopefully we'll hear something from her a little bit today, and maybe even she'll be interviewed on this program, on this, I don't know what this is, this roundtable. This roundtable.
Sarah, we'd love to. Sarah, would you like to share anything that you resonated with, or anything that's on your mind?
Well, just first, a little bit of background about me. I am a mother of 4 children. Wow. And our youngest was diagnosed with vanishing white matter just after she turned 2. And I don't know how much you want me to go into that, or do you want me to more just say what I resonated with?
Hey, you know what? This is a space for you guys to share what is on your heart, what's on your mind, what you think other mothers need to hear. So, I'll leave that to you.
I think it goes back mostly to the genes and that you are a carrier. And like, we have 4 kids. The likelihood that we have one with vanishing white matter is 1 in 4.
Yep.
And that it was our 4th child. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse,
Yeah.
But I did find it interesting. We'd only planned originally, we were just going to have 2. And then our 3rd one came along. And we're like, maybe we could do one more. I I'm from a family of 4 as well. So 4 is a great number. And like from the time that she was born, we had no idea that there was, anything wrong. She was developing normally and everything. And she was just special. Like she had angelistic qualities. And
I feel like that with
sorry.
Connor. I feel the same way with Connor. I really do.
There's a special gift that I believe that they're all given.
Yes.
And whether that's to help you love them more or, I don't know what it is, but I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah, I agree.
And we didn't know anything was wrong until she was about 18 months old. And she would kind of fall every now and again, and she'd look up at you with this silly little grin like, oh, I wasn't supposed to fall. But it wasn't really anything on my radar because she was just learning to walk. It was a little bit later. Everything else, though, she'd met all of her milestones. She was talking, she was verbal, and my son didn't really walk until he was 2 because he was too afraid to fall. He could do it, but he wouldn't do it. So it wasn't like something that I was truly concerned about. And then when she was 22 months, we'd had a family dinner, and I have a niece who is 6 months younger, and they were just running around like normal, playing. And then all of a sudden my daughter started crying, and it was just the 2 of them running around the living room. We're like, what happened? And she couldn't get up and she couldn't stand.
Oh,
and my husband was not there.
oh God.
He was becoming a midwife and was actually at a birth. And my brother was there, who is a physical therapist. And so he's like, well, structurally, I think she's totally fine. Like, I can't feel, that there's anything wrong. She could, you could move her legs. And so he kind of checked her out. So that was really nice. And I did get a hold of my husband. I was afraid that I wasn't going to, and I was really thankful that I did. I took videos of her trying to walk, and it looked like she'd had polio with her legs, and she couldn't stand by herself at all. And we did talk to her pediatrician as well, and they didn't feel that it was like, take her to the, hospital immediately. They thought, we can get an appointment, we can look. It doesn't sound like it's, and I'm actually really thankful that they didn't do that, because then we ended up, I did a lot of praying, and we found a neurologist, to make the story a little bit shorter, that was perfect. And she took, and we did an MRI, and from the MRI, she's like, I've never seen this condition before, but I think she has vanishing white matter. And there's 5 different genes that could be responsible for that. And we don't know which one. Usually they take and they test the first one. If it comes back negative, you test again. If it comes back negative, you test again until you've tested all 5. But usually, the first one is the most common. She's like, I'd like to do a full panel. And I was incredibly thankful for that, because it would have been the 4th one that gave us our answer. And she was an awesome neurologist. I just absolutely love her. And I feel that the waiting, our daughter's not afraid of going to doctors or the hospital, because she didn't get a spinal tap, and she didn't, they didn't freak out on her or us. And so, because I know the medical world is going to be a lot of her future, because as time goes on, she is continually deteriorating. But they wouldn't give us a timeline either. They wouldn't say, well, what can we expect? Because it is, in part so rare, and they also don't want to tell you, but Googling it tells you that generally from onset, they have 5 to 10 years. And right now, our daughter is 8. And the last 3 years, she's actually been pretty stable. She has lost the ability to walk by herself at all. She can't stand. She's very wobbly, but she still can talk really, really well. And she was born right-handed. Her right hand, she doesn't use that often. She uses her left hand. By 3, she was left-handed, just because she has more control of the left side. So that's my general backstory of where we are. She's been very stable for the last I want to say at least 2 years, maybe almost 3. And we do homeschool. So that helps a lot because it cuts down on exposure to any viruses, which they think is probably what triggered her decline anyway. It was just a tiny little cold that we thought was nothing. And, we all got, and we were all totally fine. Um, and then we mostly, stay home a lot. We do have the kids get together with homeschooling, but since COVID, they mostly do that online. They join online with their friends and whatnot, or we'll meet outside. And the one really neat thing is that I have a cousin who has 2 kids, and they're the age of my 2 youngest. And her daughter is actually a year older than my youngest, but she, developed mentally later and has her own little issues. And the 2 of them are like totally best friends.
Oh.
And she was nonverbal, but they would just sit on the bottom step and they would just chatter back and forth. And my daughter would tell us what she was saying, even though nobody could understand anything. So they have this little sweet friendship that
awesome
is absolutely priceless. So
how are your other children with with this, and how old are they? Or
my oldest is
that's something that's been difficult. Mine are so young, so
right. Yeah. My oldest is now 16, and then I have a 14 and an 11-year-old as well.
That's hard.
And when we knew something was wrong, the older 2 at first were worried, well, will we have it too? Will we get it as well?
Yeah.
And well, you're not a baby anymore. You've passed the age they could be carriers. There's a possibility technically that they still could, and it just was never triggered. We have not actually had them tested at this point.
Right.
So there is a possibility. In more adult onset, it's more cognitive than it is fine motor skills.
Okay.
So, but at this point, we're not ready to.
No. Yeah.
And since they're doing okay, they worry a lot. And we've told them kind of more on a need to know basis. So they do totally understand. They know that the likelihood of her living to 20 is very low.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but very low.
Are they more kind of empathetic towards generally towards other kid, or in situations? Are they? I've seen in Connor's twin Tierney, she's super empathetic, and it's not something you can teach a kid, and so she takes care of Jack and Connor. Anything Connor needs, she'll get it. He doesn't say anything to her. They don't interact. Twins are funny. Boy-girl twins are really kind of odd.
I'm a boy-girl twin. I loved it. It was the best.
Okay,
Yes.
See, that's a funny coincidence. There we go. That's amazing. So I mean, they don't really look that much alike. They're just 2 very different people, and
but I think connected in a way different than boy or girl. Mm-hmm.
They're just very in tune. I can't even describe it. They kind of know what each other is doing and thinking. And at night they kind of wake up at the same time, even though they're in different rooms, and they'll wiggle around at the same time. It's they just know. And if one of them's crying, I can always look at the other one and tell if it's a serious. So if it's not a serious cry, because now they're almost 18 months, so they have perfected faking, they do the fake crying, and especially my daughter. And if Connor's not getting upset, then I know that she's faking it, because he's just Tierney's, he can inherently tell. And same with Tierney. But she's so caring about him in a way that I've never taught her to do any of that. She just does it. I don't ask her to get him stuff. I don't she just does it. And Jack does too, my older one, but Tierney especially is like a mom with him. And Connor, he'll get more tired and he'll need more breaks. And like I said, I do think he's in some pain. And Tierney kind of knows when he's having a bad day, and she just doesn't bother him as much. So it's just interesting.
None of my children talked, and my daughter, when she was 3 years old, even though she was smaller than they were, she wasn't that much smaller than they were because their growth had all been stunted.
Yeah.
And she became their protector, their mother. It's amazing. She knew what they were. She wasn't a twin, but she knew what they needed.
Wow.
So, however, though, later in life, there was a period where she didn't really wasn't able to participate or be involved with them. And yet her attention, her caring about the disease and about her brothers made a full circle around when she graduated from college. That's when she started Angel Aid with her friends in college in
Amazing.
the year 2000. So Sarah, how are your other children?
Yeah.
Towards your little one? And also my second question, because I was offline for a few minutes, was what you do for your self-care. But first of all,
yes. I interrupted too.
How do your other children respond?
Well, for the most part now they're doing pretty good. My oldest is like another just little mom. She's an excellent, great mom, and she is the one, well, actually both of them do a really good job. My Kea has grown very, very well, so she's actually getting quite heavy. So she always needs, help to go to the bathroom and whatnot. And my 14-year-old actually does a little bit better job taking her. But like this morning, my Kea woke up and she's like, I need to go to the bathroom. So she was calling me, and my oldest, I heard her say, Mommy's not up yet. Let me take you. And so she bribed her. She said, I'll read you a story if you let me, because usually my Kea always likes Mommy doing everything for her. So they have actually helped me a lot. They are very kind. I know sometimes I fear that they might worry a little too much, especially my oldest. She's afraid, like with COVID, that she would be the one who, if she went somewhere, she might bring it home to her, or, so I worry more, I think, about her worrying than about her actually causing my youngest any trouble. And I do have I take every Monday evening to meet up with some of my friends that are the ones that they like really showed up when we needed them most. Like that's when you kind of know who your real friends are. And so like with COVID, we've done that on Zoom, and sometimes it's just me and one other mom. Sometimes it's a couple other moms, but the third Monday night of every month, if things are open, we can meet outside. We'll meet at a coffee shop that lets you just stay there even after they close and just hang out talking, or else we'll meet on Zoom and talk. And then the other thing I do is a cup of coffee to keep me awake. It's little, but it is a way of taking care of myself, because I don't get good sleep a lot of times. And when I'm tired, I'm not a happy mom. And I'm not enjoying anything. So I've been trying to stay on top of that and make sure, okay, if I'm not sleeping, I need to make sure that I have a little bit of caffeine in me so that I can actually enjoy the rest of the day. So
thank you, Sarah. Well, I'm always so inspired by you both and all of the Rare Mothers out there. And something none of you have said it explicitly, but all three of you, I can just like sense it and hear it in your stories that you practice so much gratitude. And I think that that's a way of self-care too, that, you know, I think maybe you're doing and you don't even realize it, but I just hear so many, like, we were so blessed. This is so lucky. And it's an incredible thing to, like, you know, have. Bye, Sarah.
Bye,
Bye.
Sarah.
So happy
Nice
to have you. Hopefully we see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, that practice of gratitude. I'm inspired by that, and I think that that's self-care that all of us could use a little more of. And I'm really thankful for you joining us today to share your story. And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I wish this went on for another 3 hours.
Well, we have more things. On Tuesday today at 10 with one of our really lovely health and wellness practitioners. Her name is Padma, and she leads us through like really brief meditation, and then we just open it up for discussion. Yeah, so I'm very fond of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so really brief meditation, really like catered to the Rare Mother experience. You know, you can get online and get any meditation, but this is really focused. And then we just talk. We just spend the rest of the hour talking. And then every month on the second Wednesday in the evening, there's just a meetup. Just meet up, talk. It's virtual. We all wish it was in person, but the upside of virtual is that we're all over the country right now. So
right.
We would love to have you at any of that.
Great.
Yes.
I will be there.
Thank you very much for sharing.
We did have a virtual retreat in the spring of this year.
Oh, that's neat.
And I think they're planning to do another one sometime.
Yes, things are in the works. We're trying to figure out the best way to make things happen, either in person, virtual, maybe hybrid. You know, the world is, I mean, as we literally just experienced this week, at least in Illinois, you think things are going one way and then they pivot.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yes.
And eventually, I think that there's a plan to have retreats in different locations.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's why I was happy to hear that you were willing to go forward as one of your self-care objectives, because you certainly would. I'd love to come to a retreat of yours.
Yeah. Well, I you know, this is, yeah. I need to do something else. I just felt that I needed to do more for myself. I needed to find something else, and not therapy necessarily, but something else. So I think this kind of fills that void a little bit, and helps me feel like, you know, okay, what I'm feeling is what other people are feeling, and it's okay, and helps me appreciate things, and just kind of sit with things and let them come up and let them pass instead of holding it back. It's just very unhealthy. So
yes, thank you so much, Kathryn. You feel so blessed and grateful to have you with us today, and hopefully in the future.